Roger, why don't we move over into our AMA portion?
Yeah, let's do that real quick. Before we do that, I do want to remind everyone about Mario's company, IBC. IBC has been around since 2017, working with some of the biggest projects, including projects on Binance Launchpad last year and some of the biggest launches in the last few years. They also have a massive department working with top AI agents and a huge marketing team in both Web 2 and Web 3. So with that said, if you're a VC-backed project, a meme coin, an AI project, a listed project, a studio L1, reach out. They're one of the most active investors in the space. They also do incubation and, like I mentioned, marketing services as well for your project. So definitely DM Mario's account or the Roundtable account, and we will reach out and connect you directly to the IBC team. With that said, we do have our proud sponsor, Kula DAO here. We have Mika, the co-founder. Mika, for some people that might have just joined, give us a breakdown, introduce yourself, introduce what you guys are building, and we'll get into the AMA.
Absolutely. Yes. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for listening. My name is Micah. I am one of the co-founders of Kula DAO. And really what we're building is an impact investment vehicle. We set out to kind of bridge the gap between Web 2 investment and Web 3.0 investment. So we call ourselves a Web 2.5 project because we're utilizing real world assets, traditional investments, everything that that traditional investors are used to investing in, right? Gold, natural resources, rare earths. And our company invests into those opportunities all over the world. The equity that we gain goes into our treasury, and it's the treasury that backs the value of our token. So we look to, instead of selling stocks and shares into our company, we're selling digital assets backed by this treasury full of real world assets. But the impact side of things is where we start to bring in our DAO organization. We bring not just fractionalized ownership. When we talk about tokenization, it's not fractionalized ownership. It's actually fractionalized governance. And that's the exciting thing about purchasing a Kula token is community members, whether at the governance level or at the regional DAO level, if they hold a token, they actually have a voice about the asset in our portfolio or the asset that impacts them on a daily basis. So, for instance, one of our assets that we have in Zambia is a limestone mine. And this was our first proof of concept regional DAO. So every asset that we bring on board is called a regional DAO. And there is a community that's selected, that's impacted by this regional DAO. In this case, it's a limestone mine. Now, a lot of times these mines will have big rock trucks driving through the village. The villagers might be drinking poisonous water from runoff. They might have, maybe bad working conditions, what have you. When Kula steps in, we invest to gain equity into that asset, and then we airdrop equity to the community, usually at 20% stake. So the local community members have 20% profit sharing, but then they also get governance with their tokens around that asset, and they help us decide different practices and principles regarding that specific limestone mine. For instance, in Zambia, we've had the local villagers decide that they want to pay women the same amount as men. And they also helped us decide where to dig a freshwater well for their village. And we constantly invest in developing their community to help them be a part of our regional DAO. Now, we saw this model work really well in the real world mining space. But as we started growing the scope of our project, we saw that we can copy and paste this DAO structure into really any real world profitable industry. And so now we've gone out to agri-tree projects. We have agricultural land. We have hydropower and other natural resource opportunities from Asia down to Africa. And we're even in negotiations and discussions with projects in other places around the world as well. So we've set out to essentially bridge the gap between traditional investment and this crypto digital investment by backing our token with real world assets. again, not through fractionalized ownership. It's really through the tokenized and fractionalized governance. That's kind of our secret sauce around the project. But I'll let the other two founders introduce themselves and add what they see fit as well.
Floor's yours, Samuel or Chris.
That's great. Yeah, my name's Chris. Also kind of also co-founder of Kula. We got into this gig about 3 years ago, but it was on the back of different conversations we had for a while. I spent about 20 years working in Asia in international development, and after about 10, 15 years in that space, was constantly coming up against incredible waste. I was on one assessment of a $2.5 billion project, which was funded by the UN. And we did the assessment, and at the end of the process, 6 weeks in on the audit, we found that about $300,000 had actually gone to grassroots interventions, and the rest had been siphoned off at different levels of government for cars and banquets and cars and banquets and cars and banquets. And it was kind of like that was the kind of the straw that broke the camel's back for me, in the sense that that was a common pattern. I moved over into infrastructural development work in ASEAN, and just the integration at that point of trade, logistics, actually tariff and non-tariff barriers, which is kind of funny, energy and food logistics, and thinking I'd find something different, but actually just found the same. Like a lot of investment into these projects, but the end result would be that what was promised to local communities wasn't ever delivered, and often they were displaced off the land or lost the very assets that they lived on or around. And I just thought, man, there's got to be a better way to seeing this dynamic kind of play out. There's got to be some way that we can address it. And it was several years later. I was then I only got into crypto blockchain around 2017, and it was at my first conference, and there's a gentleman from Maersk Shipping speaking up on the stage, and they just put their entire inventory on chain that year. And what was going on in Shanghai was coming off in San Francisco, and that year they'd saved $4.5 billion worth of lost product. And I was like, okay, this is the solution, this is the answer. And so the underlying kind of premise is like, how do you find a way that actually local communities that are around our planet, that both create the commodities that companies like Apple depend on, how do they actually get a fair share of the deal, right? They're often working for next to nothing, and usually lose the very land that they live on, or the livelihoods that they've had once those assets are gone. And so that was really kind of the focus of what we wanted to get into, and what we wanted to kind of start to address at source with the project.
Yeah, if I can, I mean, for me, it's like the 20% token drop to the community, more than the profit share. Many times it's the first time for those community members to really have a voice in how much, when to mine their natural resources. And you should see the faces light up when you talk about the fact that they actually have power in this entire process. So that's really heartwarming for me. Another thing is, I'll just make a quick mention. A lot of times people ask, why don't you just do a private equity firm? Sounds like you just invest in those things. There are a couple of things, right? When private equity firm make a bad investment, or the invested projects are no longer compliant, there's nothing they could do. It's just a write-off. But leveraging blockchain, we could have a way to freeze token using smart contract, and we could track where the money goes. So these are like definitive advantage of utilizing blockchain over private equity model. And earlier I was so worried about the yield and stuff like that. Like Kula is like the dream, right? Because it's really using the world asset to back stuff. So if you look at like human, society development, we basically utilize the natural resource from our planet and make it more of like a value add, right? So that's part of it. I think the Kula token will be different from many other projects, is the fact that we actually will have quite a few, millions of dollar worth of tokenized asset on day one of our launch.
That's a really good segue to my next question, and I'd love for you to dive more into this. But I'd love to hear the rationale for the DAO setup and using blockchain, maybe in a deeper regard.
Yeah, maybe if I can, let me start, and then Chris and Micah can pitch in. I probably will, most time I forget some stuff. So like we wrap a DAO structure around the regional project that we invest in. mainly because DAO is a perfect structure for people to pitch in and make proposals and vote on these proposals. DAO stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization. To me, I really disagree with most of the words there, because it's not really like 100% decentralization wouldn't work. It's a scale rather than like a binary switch, right? You will need people with specialized knowledge. You will need different teams to work on multiple facets of the project. So to us, we're kind of like a semi, like decentralized thing. And then it's really definitely not autonomous, right? Like it has to be led by human beings, a human in the loop, even if you have like a bunch of IoTs to provide the data. So the only word I agree with is organization. But nevertheless, that's the word we're stuck with. We wrap the DAO structure around these regional projects. And as you can see at the top level, you will still need an organization to decide where the money, how to deploy capital, how to do due diligence, and so on and so forth. And all of us here decided to make the top layer a DAO as well, hence the Kula DAO. So that's our double DAO structure.
Yeah, and the rationale kind of behind it is, particularly in a lot of infrastructure development work, local entities, local communities, they're given a voice kind of in word, but then in practice it's never really there. And so there's one of the larger minds on the planet set up 3 different community groups around that particular asset so that they could be profit sharing. Gave one community more than the other 2, and they've been fighting for the last 15 years while the actual asset's been exploited at scale. And those types of stories are really common, right? So there's this underlying principle that we have in our thinking as a kind of as a value set and a value base for who we are as a business. And it's not that everyone should run this way, because often people are just like, that's not interesting to us and we don't want to be part of that, and that's fine. But what we found is where local community and local groups do have a real clear say in the direction of their asset, the quality of their work and the actual productivity goes up. We can track that already in kind of POC level. So it's just good business, right? It works. There's a good rationale behind it. And I think then for the actual at the kind of the Kula level, the Kula token level, for the people that would invest in that token for the overall protocol, there's a degree of closeness to the assets that are invested in, right? You guys know, you make an investment into any particular product, by the time it's been passed down the chain within the financial system 4 or 5, 6, 7, 8 times, you don't know what you've invested in anymore. That money's kind of in the black hole of the financial systems that we're a part of. Whereas with Kula, you've got like direct line of sight, right? And that's really interesting from an impact investment perspective, and for emerging family offices, and also next Gen Z investors that are inheriting at scale, and that there's just so much more interest in the closeness to the investments that they're making and understanding what's the impact on the ground. So there's a couple of rationales for us in terms of the business modeling of why we approach it that way.
Appreciate that. And a lot of our audience is probably loving this information, but are like, okay, tell me about the token. So I want to ask some more information about the Kula token.
Which release is April 15th? Is that still the correct date?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, we're launching on the 15th of April.
Give us a little bit more of an insight of what the Kula token is, what the functionalities will have, and all the good stuff.
Micah, do you want to go, or you?
Yeah, sure. I'll go.
Silence is killing me. It's like you're leaving the audience on like the edge of their seat. Like, when's the token? When's the token?
So we've mentioned this double DAO structure. Basically, we have the governance DAO. Our top level DAO is Kula DAO, and that's what's going to be releasing tokens for sale to retail and institutional investors. And anybody with the token basically has a stake in our treasury, and they also get basically governance at, the governance level. So they're going to help us vote on what investments look like good investments to add to our portfolio, maybe even help us delist investments if there's problems down the road. They're going to help us make decisions at the governance level. And then as we onboard each asset, those assets become regional DAOs. Now we're going to release, mint tokens at the regional level, but these tokens are illiquid. They're not for sale on the market. They are purely to distribute and represent equity split down at the regional DAO level. So the community members, the mining company, and Kula will get these illiquid tokens, basically representing our equity in the asset. But then it also allows the community to vote specifically on that asset alone. So community members at the regional level will not necessarily vote at the governance level unless they hold governance tokens. They'll be voting on the asset that impacts them on a daily life, on their daily life. The token holders that buy it on market will get to help us decide and vote on governance, daily operational decisions, and things of that nature. Now, we have a very robust constitution, which is, and I can let Chris talk more about this, but this is what's going to really drive our organization and make sure that the values that we set on day one in Kula never change 50 years from now. We've seen far too many DAOs just implode because of the decentralization and the autonomous aspect of them. You give immediate power to the community, and the vision of the organization, the values of the organizations are just flipped upside down, and the organization implodes. This way, we've got a balance of powers on our constitution, and that's, like I said, that's the core of who we are, and that's going to drive this forward into many years from now.
So for people who are tuning in, just as we're wrapping up here with the last final minutes of the show, April 15th is definitely the big day. How can they get involved? Is there going to be exchanges that it'll be on? How's the launch going? Like, maybe give us a little bit of some alpha here at the end.
I gotta ask too, as an American, because I love what you're doing, am I able to get involved?
Yes. So actually, we are making some giant announcements tomorrow on our internal AMA. Well, it's for the world, for our followers. So a lot of these announcements, the exchanges, how you can get involved with precise details, are going to be released tomorrow on our AMA. So I hate to do this to everybody, but if you can, shift over to our AMA tomorrow, follow us on social media. You'll see the links there. We do a Zoom webinar and XSpace as well. That's really gonna be the best way to follow us and hear these big announcements. We have some giant ones. So we've made some fun hires. We're making progress on regulations and opportunities where we're launching out of, and then exactly what exchanges we're going to be listed on are all going to be put out tomorrow on the AMA. So I hate it, panel, that I have to do this to you, but we can't release it here until we release it on the AMA tomorrow.
It's okay, because honestly, our production panel's probably not too mad, because time is we are at the end to the show, Buzz. But with that said, is there anything else you want to let the audience know besides you guys are going to make some huge announcements tomorrow? Anything else they should know? Any updates coming besides April 15th, the Kula TGE?
Well, we're one of the most legitimate projects out there. Our first token launch will be on a centralized exchange. We are in conversation with both tier 1, tier 2 exchanges, already signed with one. So it's going to be pretty huge. And then we got to have huge tokenized asset on day one to back our token with. And we have governments plural around the world supporting our project.
I love it. So next time I need to ask Samuel questions, because he gives a little more alpha than Micah does. So I'll make sure that next time. We'll write that in the notes for next time. But with that said, I want to thank all of you guys for joining. Cool. I'm super excited for what you guys are building. Excited for your TGE coming up April 15th. Thank you to the panelists, everyone joining us. I'm going to kick it off to my co-host Buzz here to send us off, but just wanted to thank every single one of you for joining us today.
Yeah, appreciate everyone joining. If the audience is tuning in, make sure that you're looking up all these great folks on the panel. There's 9 people up here, so a lot of great people to look up on X. They probably have the same name on X, so make sure that you're giving them a follow. I'll also give Kula DAO a follow as well if you're tuning in, and make sure to be there for their big announcement tomorrow. But I do have to say, as a compliment to the Kula team, we do a lot of these shows, right? And very few times ever have I seen a team come on a panel and have a consistent background, like a green background, like you guys. Like I think the small details like that really speak towards a project. And part of my friends just having their shit together. And I was looking through your website and X profiles and things like that. It's very clear that this is very well thought out, organized, and a professional organization. So the small things like a unified background with a team can really go a long way for showing professionalism, and an industry where we certainly need that type of professionalism.